So good morning, members of the MAG ITS committee. This meeting is now called to order. For those around the table, please turn on your microphone when speaking so that those on the phone can hear you. For those participating via Zoom, please remember to unmute your device before speaking and mute when you are not speaking to create a positive experience for all attendings. Phone participants should use *6 to mute and unmute and *9 to raise their hand. The MAG public comment process provides opportunities for members of the public to comment on items scheduled on today's agenda or on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction. 3 opportunities are provided for public comment, including call to the audience, the consent agenda, and action items to be heard. MAG also provides the opportunity for members of the public to submit written comments via the MAG website prior to the meeting, as long as the comments are received at least 1 hour prior to the posted start time for the meeting. If you would like to comment at today's meeting, please fill out a white request to speak card located on the information table in the hallway. Please be sure to indicate the item for which you want to speak and give it to a designated MAG staff member. If you parked in the garage, remember to validate your ticket. Parking validators are available on the information table in the hallway. And for those who purchased a transit ticket to come to the meeting, please see staff for a ticket. Please note that hearing assisted devices are available from MAG staff. We will now begin the meeting with a roll call of all members. Susan Anderson.
Present.
Hugh Bigalk.
Present.
Tricia Boyer.
Here.
David Cates. Alyssa Dahl.
Good morning, I'm here.
Alan Galicia. Albert Garcia.
Good morning.
Hong Ho. Bruce Littleton.
Here.
Ying Yang Liu. David Lucas.
This is Ellie Velosin representing City of Tempe today.
Eduardo Rodales. Marshall Regal.
Here.
Raquel Schatz. Ward Stanford. Okay. Mike Sutton.
Here.
Christopher Wanamaker. Tessa Wessel.
Here.
Tony Whitfield. John Willett.
Here.
April Wire.
Here.
And Marty Zeich. Okay, are there any other members participating by teleconference I have not mentioned? Chris? Okay, Chris, are you okay. Well, we do have quorum. So with that, we'll move on to the next agenda item, call to the audience. This is the opportunity for the public to comment on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction that are not on the agenda or that are on the agenda for discussion and not for action. 15 minutes will be provided for the call to the audience agenda item unless the committee requests an exception to this limit. Members of the public who are attending in person may deliver their comments from the lectern at the front of the room. You have up to 3 minutes to complete your comments. A timer is provided to assist you. When the light on the timer changes from green to yellow, you have 1 minute remaining. If the light turns red, a buzzer will sound, meaning your allotted time has expired. Have we received any cards? No, okay. Are there any other members of the public here today who desire to speak on this item? Anything? No, okay. And staff, do we have any written comments for this item?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the ITS committee. As of today, no comments were received.
Thank you, Omar. So we'll move on to item number 3, approval of the minutes from the ITS committee meeting held on April 6th, 2022. Please take a few moments to review the minutes if you have not already.
Move to approve the minutes as presented.
Do we have a second?
I will second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the minutes by Bruce and a second by Albert. And you will go through roll call again. Susan Anderson,
Approve. Thank you.
Hugh Big Oak,
Approve.
Trisha Boyer,
Approve.
Melissa Dahl,
Approve.
Albert Garcia,
Approve.
Bruce Littleton,
Approve.
Ying Yang Liu, Ellie,
Approve.
Marshall Regal, Marshall. Okay, Ward Stanford,
Approved.
Mike Sutton,
Approved.
Christopher Wanamaker,
Approved.
Tessa Wessel,
Approved.
John Willett,
Approved.
and April Wire.
Approve.
Okay, with a second, members polled, the motion passes. And we will move on to the program manager's report. The MAG TSMNO program manager, Jeff Jank, will provide a report to the ITS committee. Jeff, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, member of ITS committee. It's good to be in our very first hybrid ITS committee meeting. And it's good to see some of you here in person. So let me start with the program manager's report with the federal updates, and like to invite Mr. Jeff King of the Federal Highway Arizona Division to provide that update. Jeff? I was just informed that Jeff is not online, so I will just fill in. There are 2 items on the federal update. First one is there's a new primers on the applied asset management to the traffic signals and ITS. And I felt that this is a timely publications as we are embarking our very own ITS inventory study here. So I'm looking forward to attending those primer webinars. There are 2 of them listed on the screen. Another opportunity is more webinars just using operations data to support mainstreaming of Tismo. And there on the screen that you could see that there are a number of these events listed. On May 5th, there is the webinar, and so the outline of the webinar is also listed on the slide here. Next slide, please. So this is just a monthly update on this ongoing FY 2022 TSOP project that many of you are involved with. And what I want to report is across the board green, and most of the projects are in this implementation stage, being the new signal timing plan has been developed and is now up to the agency to put it into their ATMS system. And I know there's one gray one that is basically completed. Just remind everyone that we are racing for this general deadline of June 30th. Next slide, please. This is an update on one of our important study ongoing, the MEC Regional ITS Inventory Study Update. Again, this is a two-phased effort. This is being the first phase is a study, try to understand the requirement and develop the requirements. So in the second phase, we will actually develop some kind of computer tool to help collect the ITS inventory. And up to date, we are over halfway through. We're racing for this completion in August. And many of you have helped with these workshop and interviews. And recently, you've seen this Tech Memo 1 that distributed to all the ITS committee members for your comments. And if I remember, the deadline for the comment is the Friday the 13th. Is. There was a workshop with the member agencies that we talked about the data collection opportunities. And out of that workshop, some of you have been identified for a more in-depth interview, and many of you are being scheduled, and those interviews will take place on site in your traffic management facilities. And looking forward, the next major milestone is to develop this Tech Memo number 2, which will detail the detailed data and how we collect it. Next slide, please. Later in the meeting, you will hear where we stand on the next TSOP project for the 2023. But part of it in this next wave of TSOP, one of the major change is that the TransSync, the tool, is going to be mainstream as part of the requirements for conducting the TSOP retiming efforts. And coordinating the effort within MAC is Omar. I would like to ask Omar to give a quick update.
Thank you, Jeff. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the ITS committee. So the TransSync training is scheduled to be on June 14th, Tuesday. There will be a full day of training starting at 8:30 a.m. The training will be had at MAG, the Saguaro Room. The training will be available to all member agency staff and all the TSOP on-call consultants. An email with the registration information will also be sent out after this meeting to the committee members to confirm your attendance. Seating is somewhat limited as we get the registrants and see how many people are planning to attend from the member agency side. So I advise you to register as soon as you can.
Thank you. Great. Thank you, Omar, for doing this. This, again, is very important because technically the next wave of TSOP, the whole process will start as early as July 1st. And all these planning, especially on the consultant side, need to happen before that. And I think that concludes my program manager's report. I'll yield the floor back to you, sir.
Sorry, does anyone have any questions for Jeff before we move on to the next item? Okay, our next item is the system management and operations reprogramming. I'd like to invite Dr. Jenk to provide an overview of this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This agenda item concerns the repurposing of a $9.4 million unprogrammed TIP funds. As you might remember, a couple of months back that the ITS committee has formed a working group to address this issue. So today you will hear the results and the recommendations from the working group. And I'm grateful that Patrick Stone, who is MAC TIP supervisor, has been along with us through this whole process, providing the policy guidance. With that, I will yield the floor to Patrick.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the ITS committee. Pleasure to be here to present this item. As Jeff alluded to, and I kind of wanted to take a moment, I really did want to thank the working group for their efforts, especially their patience working with me on that item. I think we got a good result out of it. So if I can get to the next slide, please. So as always, kind of want to start the presentation with a policy overview, sort of center our conversation. There are two specific sections of our federal fund programming guidelines and procedures that are going to cover what we discussed today. Guidelines last approved in 2015. And what the guidelines do is they really deal with federal funding for projects that are not associated with life cycle programs, which covers ITS projects. So we have two sections. Section 400, the regional project selection, that covers our annual call for projects. And then second, section 600.1, maybe a section people are not familiar with, but it deals with project abandonment. And so we'll get into that a little further as we go through the slides. If I can get the next slide, please. So first, last August, we initiated a call for projects. Included in that call was funding for fiscal years 23 and 24 for SM&O projects. Approximately 22.6 million was available in 3 distinct program areas, or buckets as they are known. You can see on the slide how much funding was available in each of the 3 buckets, and also how much was awarded in each bucket. Net result of the approval by Regional Council in January was 5.4 million was left unprogrammed. Next slide. Moving on, static wayfinding. This project was actually part of the original SM&O plan that was approved by Regional Council in August of 2018. You can see the scope was to implement static detour wayfinding along specified detour routes. And this project was originally included as part of Bucket 1, the Integrated Corridor Management. Previous discussions of this committee had determined that this project was no longer needed and that the amounts required to reprogramming. 4 million available for this item, so that amount also has to be reprogrammed. Next slide. So MAG staff's put together 2 scenarios to handle the reprogramming. I just want to, one thing about both scenarios, these both involve a subsequent call for projects. So the end result will be a call for projects. It's more a matter of how we get there. So each option's a little bit different. First option takes the static wayfinding funding, the $4 million, makes that available in bucket 1 for future ICM projects. And then the 5.4 million available from the previous call for projects would be available in what would be known as bucket 3 for local priorities. As you can see on the slide, the pros of this scenario, it most closely aligns with the original SM&O plan plus our federal programming guidelines, allows projects to be competed in specific buckets against specific criteria. And I think number 3 is a pretty good point. Any unused funding in either bucket could be used to address shortfalls in the other bucket. So for example, if we have more requests in bucket 1 than bucket 3, we could shift the funding over to address all of those requests. Negatives on this, obviously, because we would be doing both bucket 1 and bucket 3. There are 2 different evaluation processes. And you'll see this on the next slide as well. And any unprogrammed funding would actually need to be addressed at a later date. Moving on, next slide, please. Option 2 would be allocating all of the funding to the local priority projects or bucket 3. You can see the pros. Member agencies more easily can identify those local needs that they have. There's a singular evaluation process because it's only in one bucket. And one thing, and I thought I wanted to really clarify this, and I appreciate Jeff's team assisting me with this item especially. While you could submit any project type in bucket 3, they get evaluated against bucket 3 criteria. So if you submitted an ICM project, it still gets evaluated as a bucket 3 local priority. Something to keep in mind. Second item, funding for static wayfinding was originally designated for bucket 1. So this would be a shift from how that was originally programmed. And as I noted, any programming, oh, and I noticed a nice typo there. Okay, well, 2 and 2A, any unprogrammed funding will need to be addressed at a later date. You always see these things when you're going through slides and you're like, oh, didn't catch that, did I? All right, moving on, please. Next slide. So what we came to as we weighed this, the recommendation from ag staff is to proceed with scenario 1, which would then, as I noted earlier, it'd allow us to do the two buckets, the 4 million in bucket 1 and the 5.4 million in bucket 2. As I noted, this actually most closely aligns with the plan and our federal fund programming guidelines and policy guides a lot of what we do. So we like to be thoughtful to that. Allows the projects to be evaluated against their own criteria. And I do think there's a kind of that interesting thing that you can actually swap the funding over. So that allows some measure of flexibility. With that, next slide, please. So with that, Mr. Chair, that concludes my very brief presentation. You can see the action on the screen is to recommend approval of the proposed funding scenario. And with that, I'd be available for any questions from yourself or any member of the committee.
I have a question in terms of the overall what you're presenting makes sense to me. But the question is, if we're moving the funds and there were already submitted local projects, why don't we fund what was already in as opposed to requiring? It doesn't mean that we can't ask for more, but why wouldn't those be funded if we're just shifting the funds?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Littleton, actually a great question. And actually this question had come up previously as well. Once we've concluded the original call for projects, it's done. So those project applications are essentially, and not being flippant, they're dead. They're no longer exist. So any future call for projects, we start with a clean slate. Not to say those projects couldn't be resubmitted, and they certainly can, but they would have to resubmit the project and take a positive action to resubmit it.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Okay, hearing none, could I have a motion to recommend approval of the proposed programming scenario? Please indicate so by unmuting your microphone and speaking.
Move to approve.
We have a motion from Bruce. Do we have a second?
John Willett, second.
John, okay. Thank you. So I will go through a roll call for a vote on the motion. When I call your name, please indicate yay or nay. Susan Anderson.
Yay.
Hugh Big Alk.
Yay.
Trisha Boyer.
Yay.
Alyssa Dahl.
Yay.
Albert Garcia.
Yay.
And Bruce Littleton, you already, thank you. You made the motion. Ellie,
Yay.
I guess I'm supposed to vote too. Yay. Marshall Regal.
Yay.
Ward Stanford.
Yay.
Mike Sutton.
Yay.
Christopher Wanamaker.
Yay.
Tessa Wessel.
Yay.
John, you already made the second. April Wire.
Yay.
Okay, with a motion and a second and members polled, the motion passes. So we will be moving forward with scenario 1. Thank you, Patrick, for your presentation. With that, we're going to move on to item number 6. This is the TSOP 2023 TSOP project applications. This is going to be for information, discussion, and possible action to recommend approval of the new FY 2023 TSOP list of projects. I'd like to invite Eric Nava with MAG to present this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members of the ITS committee. Today we'll be going over the application process and the programming of the FY 2023 Traffic Signal Optimization Program, or TSOP, list of projects. So for this round, it is a cyclical program that we go through the call for projects. This particular round of projects, we are funding for up to $500,000 is our program budget, and we are applying for projects for the fall of 2022 and to the spring of 2023 projects. We did receive 12 applications, which is actually the same number of projects that we did receive pretty consecutively the last few years. The call for projects that we did receive, the call went out April 13th of 2022, and the applications were due by noon of April 27th, which was a Wednesday. Here's a map, a very short, small map that identifies the locations of the proposed 12 projects that we did receive. As you can see in the image, some do spread out quite far into the East and West Valley, but we do seem to have a pretty widespread of locations of projects throughout this year. We did receive, I believe, we did receive 4 applications from Gilbert, 4 from Maricopa DOT, 1 from Goodyear, 3, I believe, from Tempe. And here is that list of projects. Now, one thing that we did want to begin to look at, based on the list of projects, we do have available funding that is unprogrammed or would be unprogrammed, be it that the ITS committee recommends this list of projects, of approximately $137,000 still remaining within the budget. Now, given that we have approximately the same number of applications, what is recognized is through these list of projects, the corridors do seem to be smaller in terms of number of intersections that we did receive for these particular projects. One thing that I also want to note, based on this new call for projects on the FY23 program, we do have a new category, for lack of better words, that is called the Transsync Optimization, as Dr. Jank mentioned in his program manager's report, that we are attempting to use this software tool in the full implementation purposes, and designating specific projects that can use Transsync as the optimization rather than doing full turning movement count collections. So we do have 2 projects that we received for that particular category, one in the town of Gilbert and one in the city of Tempe. Both of those particular projects have been or partially have been retimed via the TSOP program from previous years, and are requiring fine tuning and diagnostics to determine to make those corridors operate in better conditions. And one particular project as well is a turning movement count only data collection project presented by the Maricopa DOT. So the purpose of this today is to go over the applications and to do what we'll call as the technical evaluation. And primarily what that is each member agency or applicant of an application will present their particular project or a set of projects. And it is the ITS committee's job to ask any questions or to make sure that it meets the merit or the scope of the project, and that we can determine whether that project should be on the list of this year's projects. Each applicant will receive up to 5 minutes, including Q&A for those questions. If you do have a set of projects, we did put the presentations together so that you can just ride right through each of your agency's applications. If no recommendations or revisions are provided, we will take possible action on that list. Since we do have the funding available in the budget to host all those projects, basically, we can take action today, and we do have some additional information at the end to discuss possible ideas and opportunities, good opportunities with the additional funding that we have available in our program this year. So here's that list of funding. The additional $137,000, we'll have some additional recommendations to that list, as well as potentially a second call for projects for additional spring projects if needed. So what we'll do first is we'll go through all the applications. So I'll call for the agencies. The first one will be the town of Gilbert. And if Mr. Mike Sutton can go through his list of projects, starting with Jermaine, and I will be running the PowerPoint.
Thank you, Eric, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee. I guess start whenever you're ready. Eric, I'll be here.
Yes.
Oh, I see it now. Sorry, I didn't have it open there. On Germain Road from Gilbert to Power. Basically, that's end to end through the town of Gilbert. We have a construction project going on there right now, which I know some members who live in the area are aware of. And that should be completed here in the next few months. So we're asking for that, to be retimed both AM, PM, and midday, and also work, within some of the timing plans that we've worked on, over the last few years. And the estimated cost on that is $38,000. Next slide, please, or any questions, however we're doing this. All right. It's 6 miles, 6 lanes, east-west, 45 miles per hour. In addition to that, we are, the points that are here, we are also putting in a new access down at freeway access in conjunction with ADOT down at the Lindsay Road TI. So we're anticipating trying to stay ahead of the game on that as well with, this retiming effort. There's a mix of fiber and wireless, right now. And anyways, there's communications there. It's all going to be fiber real soon, but that's the way it is today. And then there's also a mix of Cobalt and ASC3s, and we have a existing synchro network. All these intersections are included as well. Next slide. And there's a map of this area. And I think that's about it for this project. If anybody has any questions, or unless we're doing all three and then asking questions. I'm not sure, Eric.
We'll go one at a time.
All right.
Any questions for Mr. Sutton? Okay, we'll move on to the next one.
The next one, in the not too distant past, we did the north end of Gilbert Road and have sort of avoided the downtown area because based on some of the input from the town fathers and leaders, they want us to see that more of a destination than a pass-through location. If any of you live in the area, that's why it wasn't included and why we're going from Elliott south, down to Pecos, again to the edge, of our town. It's signal retiming, 12 intersections, AM, PM, and midday. Estimated cost $44,600. Next slide. And I'm sure you guys can read what's there. It's probably a little bit redundant for you, but I do appreciate putting these slides together. Again, Econo-like controllers, Cobalt and ASC3s, 45 miles an hour on average, basically from Elliott South, but there is a section there, you know, on the north end that's obviously a little bit lower as you approach our downtown area. And we do have these intersections existing within our synchro network currently. Next slide, which will be the map, I'm sure. And that is the area we're talking about there. I'm having trouble seeing that, to be honest. Let me see if I can get my glasses out here. Right down to Queen Creek. All right. Are there any questions on that currently?
Mike, I have a question. Are these intended to be timed as two separate corridors, or would it be continuous?
You mean as far as on Gilbert Road itself? It will be approached separately, because downtown is basically, they're seeing it more of a destination than a pass through. There will be some level probably of coordination, but the fact that it drops down to 25 miles an hour and the amount of traffic that they see there, there may be a little more of an effort in doing some of the off-peak, you know, pass-through traffic, but at the peak times and in the evenings and, you know, up until like 9 o'clock, they want people basically going down to our downtown area, not passing through it.
Okay, I think I misspoke. I'm actually asking about the connection there at Pecos when we go from Gilbert to Lindsay.
Let me see if I'm having trouble seeing that real quick. Let me look on my screen here. Okay. No, that portion of Lindsay Road, and I for whatever reason didn't include it. That's why I was looking funny. I need glasses, obviously, but that portion of Lindsay Road to the south, it would have been included with an existing project that we just did, but because of that TI that's being constructed, they're a little behind schedule on that, and so it wasn't going to, you know, be completed. So we went ahead and decided to postpone it and add it in with this other project. And that the Lindsay Road timing, which I know we talked about it a little bit earlier in the implementation phase, but I just barely put in the new timings down to Williamsfield, and then from Pecos to the south. That'll be being done with this project, and it will be continuous, yes. And in addition to what we're doing today, I mean, I literally put them in this week, everything to the, you know, north of there.
Thanks.
Yep.
Any other questions from Mr. Sutton? All right, we'll go to the next one. This is Wrecker.
The next one is Wrecker Road, you know, baseline to Pecos. Again, one of the big things that we've been confronted with here is trying to, you know, try to do our retiming when the construction is gone. And so, you know, the previous projects, you know, both had you know, some of that in them as well. And Wrecker Road is no stranger as well, if any of you live out that way. And everything that's going on there at Morrison Ranch. And the associated intersections there. So all of that is scheduled to be, you know, completed soon as well. And so we're going to go ahead and take that opportunity to retime Wrecker Road. It hasn't been done for many years. And we've been trying to work our way from a starting point where we started around the Val Vista area and work east and west, and then try to hit a few well, and the north-south corridors there, but east and west along those north-south corridors, and hit a few east-west corridors as we go. And this is consistent with that, heading out to the east. After this, you know, we at some point we'll probably be working with, you know, Queen Creek and Mesa, and maybe doing something with Power Road in the future, hopefully. But anyways, 12 intersections, AM, midday, PM, 44,600. Next slide, taking too much time. 6 miles, 4 lanes, mix of fiber and wireless. Again, nothing new there, still Econo-like controllers. And it also is part of our existing network. And that's the corridor there. We do have a few intersections, as you see, you know, that are kind of adjacent to, you know, there that haven't been looked at in a while, you know, either. So we went ahead and threw those in, and we had done some additional coordination east-west on a few of those, you know, as well along Guadalupe and Elliott. And so those were out on the edge. And so we're just trying to work those in as well. But there will be some level of, coordination driving those intersections. Also, to try and do the best we can east-west with the focus on this being north-south. Even though it doesn't have freeway access, we still have a huge amount of people going down to the north and making that left and going over to, to Higley or even up to Power, but most of them going down to Higley to get on the freeway. Any questions?
No, we'll go to the next one.
All right, the next one is the new, I guess we'll call it, project they came up with. It's a TransSync optimization project. A few years ago, we had to do Val Vista also in a couple of pieces because of its length and also because of construction that was going on, especially down at the north end. Now, Val Vista has been retimed, throughout. And while we have, driven it ourselves, made a few modifications and whatever else, we saw this as an opportunity just to try to make it as good as we can and transition through those three projects, that were done in the past and try to improve things for people. And the midday never was touched. We do have an existing midday plan, but we never did that. We never optimized that plan. And so this will give us an idea as well with some of the stuff we've done in-house during that midday plan, if it's, if it can be made better, I guess. And that's about it. Unless there's a map. Oh, there's more. Sorry. And that's the corridor that we're talking about right there. If there is extra funds, and I don't know that there is in this case, but we had tried, because of the limitation on the project, we didn't go all the way, up to baseline, if you guys are curious why, because they were trying to stick to a certain length.
Any questions for Mr. Sutton? All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next one will be City of Goodyear.
Thank you, Eric, members, chairman, and members of the committee. I'm Hugh Biak, city traffic engineer, and I'll be presenting Goodyear's submission for the 2023 TSOP, which is Van Buren Street from SR 303 to Litchfield Road. As I stated, this project is in the city of Goodyear. It will focus on signal retiming and the turning movement counts in terms of the data collection. It involves the 9 toll intersections. It's 8 toll intersections with 1 TI. That's how we came up with 9. And what we're requesting in terms of timing is for an AM, midday, PM, and weekend plans. The estimated cost per the criteria is $47,100 with 0 local costs. Next slide, please. And so the detailed project information is, again, it's Van Buren, 303 to Litchfield Road. It's approximately 4 miles in length. And also important to point out that Van Buren is located approximately 1/2 mile south of I-10, which again makes it an alternate and reliever route for I-10 during incidents and closures. The highest traffic volume experienced on Van Buren Street is approximately, and this is from 2019, it's approximately 14,500 vehicles per day, and that's located on the east end near Litchfield Road. All traffic signals on this route are connected via fiber and uses all Econolite Cobalt traffic signal controllers. And the city does have an existing citywide synchro model, so that the creation of a model will not be necessary. Obviously, we'll hand that over to the selected consultant to aid them in the development of the plan. And next slide, please. And this is a map showing the corridor that we're speaking of for this proposed project. We have Van Buren Street running left to right across the screen. On the far left, we have State Route 303. And on the far right side of the screen is Litchfield Road. And the intersections in question, I could read them off individually, I guess. So it's on the far left, the interchange of 303 Van Buren Street, next one, 167th and Van Buren, Saraville Van Buren, 158th Avenue in Van Buren, center of the screen, Estrella in Van Buren, Bullard in Van Buren, 143rd Van Buren, and then finally Litchfield Van Buren. And that's enough talking about Van Buren for now. So with that, that concludes my brief presentation, and be happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
Any questions for Mr. Bigal? Okay. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you, everybody.
We'll move to the next one with Maricopa County.
All right, thank you. Okay. So we're asking for 4 projects. This first one is MC 85 from Baseline to Saraville. This particular project, we are looking for retiming of signals in that area. We're talking about the way West Valley almost to Verado and Buckeye area. We've seen a lot of growth in that area. So we've gotten a lot of concerns from citizens regarding just improvements that could be made out there. Right now, all those signals run in free. There's 5 intersections that are being proposed. We're looking at AM, midday, and PM time periods to be evaluated with an estimated cost of $21,500. Next slide. And so we are connected by fiber out there, but it's pretty far from our TMC. So there is a wireless hop back to our TMC from that area. We have ASC 3 Econolite controllers out there. And we have no synchro network out there because traditionally it doesn't run with coordination out there. Next slide. And so this is a map. You can see 85 on one side, but pretty far west, honestly. Again, just 5 intersections that are running in free right now. Any questions? All right, next slide.
May I ask a question really quick? This is Eric. What are the approximate distances between each of the intersections, particularly in the middle? Do you know what those distances
Honestly, don't have that information off the top of my head, but I can get that for you.
Okay.
All right, so the next project is Indian School from 99th Avenue to 111th. This is asking for signal retiming of 5 intersections, AM, midday, PM, and weekend, with an estimated cost of $29,500. So this in particular location, project limits was identified because we are anticipating an adaptive system being installed on there in FY24 is the funding year. So probably won't be turned on until FY25, but we want this area to be retimed very effectively. So in anticipation of the adaptive system coming online, that, you know, we have a good comparison of before and after. So that's why we're asking for this particular route. Next slide. So we have fiber through that area as well with ASC 3 controllers and an existing synchro network currently. Next slide. So this is the map of the 5 locations just west of the Loop 101 interchange. Yeah, again, just really focusing on getting those 5 intersections coordinated and with good coordination, timing plans going through there in anticipation of adaptive coming online. Questions? All right.
Thank you.
So the next one is for turning movement counts only on MC 85 between El Mirage and 83rd Avenue, focusing on 8 intersections, asking for AM, midday, and PM. Turning movement counts, estimated cost $5,280. Next slide. So we have fiber through that corridor, but that last hop is on a wireless route. And then we have AC 3 controllers and an existing synchro network out there. We have a lot of construction going on that in particular section of MC 85 right now. So right now we're just asking for turning movement counts. We have some staff in the TMC that could gain some experience from developing coordination plans. So that's the idea behind this one, is getting the turning movement count and having that particular individual retime these signals on their own so that they can gain that experience. Next slide. So this is the route pretty much on the map here. Any questions? Pretty straightforward, just turning movement counts.
Okay.
Next slide.
one.
All right, so this one is for Union Hills from 99th Avenue to 55th Avenue. And so we're partnering with City of Glendale, Peoria, and ADOT on this one. Includes 18 total intersections, looking for AM, midday, and PM timing plans. Estimated cost $64,400. Next slide. So we really want to get some nice coordination plans on this particular route because it does go from jurisdictional boundary to jurisdictional boundary. We have fiber through that corridor with ASC3 controllers. There is a existing synchro network for that corridor. Next slide. And so it's a quite extensive, Loop 101 is right in the middle. And so we all know about the Loop 101 mobility project. I'm just going to bring it up just to throw it out there. But we really want this corridor to be retimed very nicely. Our plan is to take whatever is developed by the consultant for the synchro network and also develop some more ICM plans on top of that. Pretty much flush plans, oversized cycle links and whatnot. But this effort related to this TSOP application is really focused on just traditional AM, midday, PM timing plans for now. Questions?
Yeah, I have one. Is there or are there plans for a common time source between the, looks like 4 agencies?
Yeah, so right now, I think all of them are running off of a central system. So we can talk about that and see what the idea behind that is.
Yeah, and I ask because out of experience, with multi-jurisdiction coordination, if you're got any type of time drift, plan's really not effective.
Yeah,
So-
I agree.
I have another question on the TI. Is that counted as one intersection or two?
We're counting it as 2.
As 2 intersections. Thanks.
I would like to clarify on the common time references. While the ATMS all have some kind of GPS source, but there's one parameter that is how much of a deviation that you set before you make the corrections, and that matters. So if the agency said it drift more than 5 seconds to correct, then you got this possible error of 10-second difference.
Yeah, we'll definitely take a look at that when we get to that point in the implementation process.
Any other questions? Okay. I believe that was the last one. Thank you. We'll move on to City of Tempe.
Thanks, Eric. You can go ahead. So we're asking for 3 TSOP projects. The first is on Warner Road. It is the full extent of the city east to west from Harl and Emerald to SR 101. It includes 9 intersections. 2 of those are at SR 101. And we're just asking for AM and PM peak timing plans right now. Estimated cost $24,800. Go to the next slide. It's about 4.5 miles. It serves a lot of commercial and residential traffic. IKEA is right on that corner, so we get a lot of traffic there. We are putting 2 new pedestrian crossing signals on Warner Road within the next 3 years, and we would like to have some good coordination so that we can best time those when they go in. We have 6 of those intersections are on wireless and 3 are on fiber. They're all ASC3 controllers. We do have a Synchro 10 network. It may be out of date, so we'll ask the consultant to update that for us. We prefer to do this one in fall 2022. And can you go to the next slide? There's just a map. The 2 future ped crossings, just for reference, are located on there as well. Any questions about Warner Road?
Okay, we'll move on to the next one.
Okay. So this one is Kyrene Road. It is a north-south corridor going from baseline to the Tempe boundaries. There's 6 intersections. We're again only asking for AM and PM peak signal timing plans. We're estimating $18,200. And a note that Warner and Kyrene is also part of this corridor. So we wouldn't need to get new counts on Warner when this is done in spring of 2023 preference. You can go to the next one. It's a 3-mile corridor. We currently have 1 hawk that crosses that. We've never done a MAG TSOP project on Kyrene. We have 5 of those intersections are on wireless. 1 is on fiber. They're all ASC3 controllers. And again, we do have that Synchro 10 network. It may be out of date. And we prefer to do that one in 2023 because Warner and Kyrene will be included in fall. Next slide. So this is north is pointing to our left on this one. So it's a fairly short corridor with only a few signals. So. Any questions about Kyrene? Okay. And the last one is Rio Salado Parkway. So this one we're asking for a TransSync optimization. We're asking for AM, midday, PM, and weekend plans, and the estimated cost is $15,000. There are 15 intersections from downtown Tempe to SR 101. Go to the next slide. So we did a TSOP on Rio Salado in 2019. However, the corridor is growing very quickly. There's a lot of commercial traffic and ASU traffic, and there is now a streetcar that is on a portion of that. So we're asking for the TransSync optimization just to update what was done in 2019 and try and make sure those are as tight as we can get them. 4 of those intersections are on wireless and 9 are on fiber. There are 2 that are majority just PED crossings. They also serve the streetcar, but they don't have communications at this point. Again, we have the Synchro 10 network, but like April, I would like some of our staff to get the opportunity to update that for the Rio Salado corridor before this happens. Next slide. So this is a map. We can see there's a mile stretch between Scottsdale and McClintock where there are no signals currently. There will be signals going in at the half mile there probably within the next 5 years, but we don't know exactly when yet. Any questions on Rio Salado?
Quick question on
Yeah.
that 2 locations that do not have communication.
Yeah.
Is there a plan to put in like a GPS for common reference?
Yes, I believe so. I'd have to ask David though.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. I believe that concludes all the applications. One last time for any questions from anybody? Okay, so this is again just a reiterating of what that list of projects are. The 12 applications as presented and as previously mentioned, we do have additional funds that have been unprogrammed. Now, a couple of things that we are taking this in these opportunities right now, reiterating the idea that, again, we've received 12 applications, which has been pretty much the average for the last 5, 6, at least the time that I've been here. So it's wavered between 10 to 13 projects. So we are still receiving the same number of projects. What we did notice this particular time is the size of those particular projects may have reduced in terms of size and the number of those intersections. So that's what I think what we kind of noticed this year. We did increase the costs for each of the project types. If anyone noticed on the application as we reviewed it last ITS committee, of increasing the costs to each what we call our unit cost, basically by intersection, as well as adding additional funds for the use of TransSync in all projects. So we have a dedicated kind of fixed rate cost of the consultants going out as a 2-person team running the corridors for implementation, fine tuning, all the diagnostics to make sure that the timings are running as intended when we're doing these TransSyncs. So all those projects costs have been incorporated into these this new unit or project costs. Now, a few of these options that or opportunities that we have with the continuing funds is we can do another call for projects in the spring. I did hear from another agency later on is that if there is additional funds, they may potentially go for a spring call. So there are additional opportunities that we can do later on in the spring. We can do that call for projects, probably heading towards November, December timeframe. Another opportunity as well is to service any new projects or a special TSOP related type of projects to serve the program for program improvements as well as regional advancements. Now, program improvements could be something such as the effort that we did as we introduced the new TransSync software where we did hire a consultant to develop a whole methodology and guidebook on how we did this for before and after performance evaluations. And that is introduced and basically forwarded the idea of using TransSync for all optimization projects, but solely using TransSync as an optimization tool for those fine-tuning diagnostic type of projects. So we've been able to advance the program in that way, and there may be additional opportunities to do such things, as well as regional advancements. We consider that more as that regional advancement. Other program improvements is one particular thing that we've been discussing internally is how do we do more of a data-driven type of process for evaluating or determining particular corridors that may need some advanced timings. So if there is a more data-driven type of approach, we would want to develop that methodology that we've been doing ourselves for a little while, or testing, trying to figure out a methodology. But if in the future we want to have a more data-driven process, this may be an opportunity to use these type of funds for that. As well as another opportunity that we have is potentially to increase a one-time increase for this set of projects to use for increasing the window of our turning movement counts. Now, typically the way we've developed our unit costs for the turning movement counts is it's a unit cost of, I believe it's $220, which is a 10% increase that we did last year, per intersection per time of day plan. Now, that usually gives us a 2-hour window for each of those time of day plans. One that's a little bit limiting in terms of we've always capped that 2-hour window because of the demand of the TSOP as a program and trying to fit as much projects in there, but not taking up too much of the overall budget for each project, that it's all just turning movement counts, and then half the cost is just going to the consultant doing the actual timing work. This, we have an opportunity as well to add potentially an additional hour or 2 hours to each of those time of day windows. So that look at maybe another $100 to $200 for each intersection for each time of day plan. Just some quick back of the napkin type of calculations that we have on this small table on the, it would increase our overall program if we did 1 additional hour for each project minus the TransSync optimization projects to approximately $393,000. If we added 2 additional hours to each time of day plan at each intersection, it would increase it to $425,000. So we'd still have some remaining funds at the end of that. So I still find a good opportunity for doing an additional call for projects, or if if there's continued interest on going for another TransSync type of project as well, if there are other additional interest in that. I know Mr. Sutton mentioned that going all the way up on the north side of Bella Vista, that could be an increase to that, and hearing from another agency going for either a TransSync or a full optimization project. So we can have that conversation now, but if we do want to do that funding increase, we would apply that cost to each intersection by that unit cost, which would change the overall program budget. And what we're necessarily interested right now is taking an action on the overall approval of the list of projects and the overall program budget. So I'd like to ask if there's any questions on if we want to increase the turning movement count projects, then the cost of the overall program for this year would be different. So we'd be making a motion to approve the new overall project program cost.
Eric, just so I'm clear, so essentially right now, the projects get 2 hours of TMCs per plan.
Correct.
And this proposal would either add to, it would increase it to 3 hours or 4 hours per plan.
That's correct.
Okay.
So I just want to add a word on the TMC options, turning movement count option. I think that was my first observation when I get involved with the TSOP project, knowing that the data collections are using devices, camera, and they literally cover the entire 24-hour period. And this decision of we need to let them know which 2 hours of data that we need is really driven by the cost. So I just felt that That does not make sense if you think that turning movement counts are in 15 minutes being, so 2 hours give you what, 8 slots, right? And you're hoping that that 8 slots would cover that 4 top peak period, right? Well, I mean, chances are they might lay within the 8 slot period, but the chances are they might be off. So what we're missing is that you clearly see that the peak's still going on, but you get no data to tell you and to affirm that this 6 to 10 a.m. period is still a good one, right? So I just felt that is something, and I've jokingly in our internal discussion, we said that that's really a quirk of the whole process, and it's because of the cost. But then again, I mean, now that we know the parameters we're dealing with, that so does it will increasing 4 more slots, how much it will improve the chance of giving us more information, or should it be like doubling it? So that's kind of a decision to make. And for the long term is, I hope that there's a technological solution to address this such a essential functions for everything. Like why are we even basing on 1 day worth of count, believing it is representative for what, the whole year or the season and all that, right? So I mean, now I'm just want to advocate on our MAC ongoing emerging technology pilot program. I'm hoping that we're now looking at a lot of sensor technology, and also within our TESMO program, we were talking about that we want to get the TMC out of our detection in our phase 1, but it did not go all the way through. We did not mandating that those data being collected and archived, right? So I think this is something that we actually long term, that's something that we need to address as a program.
We do have a question from online as well from Mr. Regal. Marshall?
Yeah, Chairman and Dr. Jiang and committee members. I'm just curious, doesn't the process now, and Jeff alluded to this, you have your 24-hour counts. So can't every one of these projects, before they start ordering their turning movement counts, determine what the peak period is, and if they really need to count for 3, as opposed to just blanketly saying every project should do a 4-hour count for a peak? So doesn't the process right now allow the projects to isolate what those peak periods are and then determine if they need to do a 2-hour or a 3-hour count?
May I?
Go ahead, Jeff.
Okay. Marshall, I think I have an answer to your question, which is an intuitive question. Like if you did collect 24 hours of video, wouldn't you want to know the distribution and to allow us to identify which 2 hour the data? But I think this has a lot to do with the technology and the process, that the video recording is just passive. But and I know, and I can speak for the vendor, that if you buy a MyoVision does charge you the additional cost for their algorithm to decode those. But in the past that I've learned that the vendor, in terms of the cost conscience, they chose to manually count from the video. So that kind of defeat the purpose of having high tech, right? But then by doing it manually, they want to know which 2 hours. So this is now, you can see a circular question there, a chicken and an egg, demanding chicken to know when you're gonna give birth, but the other ways around. So.
But Jeff, in that.
No, I
Go ahead, Bob.
understand that, Jeff. But really, for these studies to be implemented and to prove fruitful, you really need to know if you have the correct peak period. So it's really a very critical part of the decision tree, if you will, to know what that time period is. Because they are changing across the valley, especially now with the amount of telecommuting going on and things like that. So I think it would be more valuable to make a part of the TSOP to get the 24-hour curve, if you will, to then determine what your peak periods are before you start getting all this detailed traffic count data. That's just my opinion.
And I was sort of going to echo that same sense. And Jeff, you mentioned it, that it is up to the agency to identify the peak hours that they want. But I don't disagree with what you're saying. The technology is there. That is a 2-hour window sufficient in order to make a timing decision? Yes. Should it go for 2 hours or 4 hours or whatnot? That comes off a 24-hour count. It doesn't have to come off a turning movement count. So in the context, you expand the turning movement count. I don't know there's any value to expanding the turning movement count in terms of now the ADT and knowing where that peak hour is and how long you put that timing plan in for. Absolutely. But you're still only going to look at a window of time in order to make that determination. What are your splits for that period of time?
Yeah, I agree with you that the HCM procedure go by, there is a process of identifying the so-called peak period and the peak, calculating peak factor, right? So those are the 4 contiguous highest demand, right? And however, if you remember those tables, they do list all turning movements. So there's a way to reconcile all approaches. But I think Bruce, you touch on one thing that, and I was informed by Eric that there was a consultant that they decided to tackle this challenge, outside of provided funding, that they actually use the tube count for the whole approach.
And that's
that
what
at least give you the 24-hour and it's cheaper. But then again, how reliable is tube count? That's another question.
Well, and that's what actually I was going to mention as well is, we were looking into in terms of our overall TSOP workflow. If you recall, we've done an entire kind of revamping of our program workflow for each task order. One thing that we were considering is those segment counts, right? You just need a tube count, which is lot cheaper than just doing turning movement counts, especially with the technology. So how do we include that? But also we would, because of the way that we do these allocation of funds and the overall budgeting is we have to take that call, right? So we would need to determine which segments. It depends on what the corridor is, because a lot of our projects, luckily this year, a lot of them are just a single corridor, but we had multiple corridor projects that are not just a straight corridor. So which segments do we need to do that? We need to include that in the application. We just didn't get that potentially done. But for the most part, I think we have room in that budget to include that in terms of the overall workflow for projects, to include those really relatively cheap segment counts or tube counts, really, to just collect that 24-hour.
And one would even argue, because it's such an augmentative data source, right? We don't have to count all 4 approaches. Just focus on the coordinated directions. And that means 2. However, some of our streets are so wide, and my previous experience with tube count is those tube, when they go too long, you got all kind of problem, right? So they could end up with 2 counts in order to cover the wide lane. I think this is a great discussion. And
I had one comment, Jeff, on that. Is if you wanted to do this time just as a pilot and then sort of quantify the positive and the negative of doing so, I'm in favor of that. Maybe don't make this the standard just yet, but just maybe that would satisfy everyone's, interests.
No, Mike, I 100% agree. and Bruce, I understand and I agree with what you're stating, but you don't know what you don't know. Our detection has the ability to collect 24-hour turning movement counts. And as a feature of it, it identifies peak periods. And some of those surprised me, and I would have been way off. So by being able to expand the 2 to 4 hours to give yourself a bigger target, you can either validate that, yes, you were right on where you thought you were, or shift where you're at. And Mike took the words out of my mouth. I was going to suggest if there's funding here that will still allow for funding to promote a couple different projects down either in the spring or extend current ones, I think it's money well spent. We can then at the completion of this evaluate, is there value in expanding the 2 to a 3 or the 2 to a 4, and really make that educated decision versus just going off of what we feel.
Great input, Albert. I'm sorry, I do want to ask, like, without advocating the brand name, your system does that, right? I mean, this systematically anywhere you have detection.
Correct.
So meaning that we don't have to do tube count for yours. And then the question goes, what about other jurisdictions that have the same system? Do they do the same? I mean, that's kind of, if it's a free data already exists, that is something that we never tap into. Other additional question being, what about other system? I mean, do they have a similar, function that already exists?
So fortunately for me, the system that I have, it's basically just a few clicks of a mouse and I get that full report. And it's really easy to read, and it does the heavy lifting for me. I've got a couple different intersections that run different reports that I would have to get a little more into it to identify that, but that information is there. So I want to kind of add on to what I was, my initial statement is, so for an agency, and we don't have a TSOP project and we don't have one on the horizon. But for me, I would be comfortable because I could very easily go in and identify those peak hours. So a 2-hour window, great. But for an agency or an intersection that I don't have that technology, I would feel a lot more comfortable giving that broader target. But like I said, a lot of the detection now, the video detection, I'm not familiar with data collection from the radar side. I don't know how, what the availability of that data is and how you would collect it. But at least the video side that's doing counts, some of them automate those reports for you. Other ones will give you the raw data in Excel and you can go in and crunch those numbers on your own. But again, that is, that's some of the things that you would have to do to find those.
And I think tagging off of that, we do have similar detection in Peoria as Albert does, and we have some others that are collecting data. I believe the same as what the counties are doing. Some of them are easier to get the data out, but it is there. And it's certainly something that the raw data could be provided to the consultants to determine those best 2-hour windows. I'm just kind of thinking, looking at the charts here and stuff, is wondering this, just for this particular round, since it's kind of a new concept, is to maybe do the +1, do a 3-hour TMCs for each of the projects this round, as well as doing some corridor, just basically segment volume counts to find those peak hours, and then kind of do a combination of the two working together to just see how it goes. And then maybe in the future, it's something we could consider is, do you have detection that collects data? So therefore, in the application moving forward, those particular agencies, like Albert said, could just say, well, I know my 2-hour windows. Whereas an agency that doesn't have that detection available would just apply for a greater cost to get the same information. So just a thought.
Can I make a quick question? Would it be possible to have some flexibility in that we say, we're going to do 3 hours for everyone, but if you do have a type of detection that can give you whatever counts you want, can we apply some of that money to getting longer counts at other intersections that don't have that type of detection, or getting a tube count where we don't have a segment? Can we be some flexibility with that?
Yes, the short answer is yes. And definitely, this is definitely the feedback that we continue to look for year by year, is please, provide that feedback as we're continuing to try to improve our program overall. That's what I think has made some challenges in terms of trying to determine what is the overall project cost. And we try to, whittle it down to just a unit cost per intersection, but it's just not as flexible. And that's something that we're trying to figure that out, because we do approve of these projects prior to even scoping them out, through the consultant, which is not ideal, but that's just the way our program works on this stuff. So we would like to take those future opportunities in the application to say, do you have TMCs at each of the listed intersections, right? And then, as we can kind of build that in and determine what information we can get from that, and make better estimations on our project costs.
I think some of this is also in the state of flux. To Jeff's point earlier, what the technology does, what Albert's already doing, it depends on who you're hiring and what you're doing. And in a year or two ago, they were filming it for 24 hours and then sitting there manually with the counter and maybe do it and fast forward, but they were counting it. You were paying for the man or the person to sit there and make the count. As that gets machine generated, as Albert's already doing with his detection, that's going to change the cost. So we're in that flux in between where we were, where we are today, and where we're going to be a year or two from now. As that gets automated, it's going to change this entire process.
I'd like to echo on what Bruce said, that it's truly, there is a flux going on because of many things. One other thing, when we look at this number, we said, wow, this is the first year that we have 137K. Does it mean that there's a lower desire for retiming signal in the region? But then we realized that the number looks about the same, 12 applications, and I did a ballpark. A number of intersections is about the same. So what has changed in addition to what you just said is maybe I can think of the smarter programming that since 2 years ago, when we start looking at this TSOP process that's been adopted for decades, right? Start looking into asking, like, do we need the same treatment? Same treatment being turning movement count everywhere. So that's why we have a lower cost option, which is meant to be a kind of quick follow-up, just verify the offset. This is trend sync operation. So there are lower costs. Now we get to do the same with lower costs. That's what you're seeing here. But that also gives us an opportunity to start addressing this issue that we have lived with for a year, such as the data is so important that affects the outcome of it. And by needing to guess that one day, and then down to the 2-hour periods, there are a lot of compromises we made. So this may be an opportunity to start addressing this issue.
And Jeff, the other comment I wanted to make, and City of Phoenix did not put any in, not because we didn't want to, but because we've shifted on what we're doing and what we're doing in-house. And as you pointed out in your report, yes, we're on target, but we're slammed. So we didn't put any in for this year because now we're doing the work instead of the consultant. 3-4 years ago, you were turning the whole thing over to consultant and you got a finished product. And so we are moving with the time. We do have TransSync. We are doing the kinds of things. And so we're asking for less. We're only asking for the turning movement count and whatnot. But that means we're doing more. And so that's why, for example, we didn't put any in this year because we're caught up, but we're slammed. And so because we've shifted who does the work. So I just want to point it out. It's not for lack that we would, are there quarters we like to retime? Absolutely. Did we do it right now? No, because we just don't have the resources right now.
And then to Bruce's point, I definitely agree with him. Like McDOT's approach on retiming signals has changed over time. And I'm going to get on my ATSPM soapbox a little bit. I say this, I feel like every time we have these TSOP conversations that I would like to see ATSPMs used more heavily. I think this is a great platform because you guys have so many consultants on board to help with these TSOP efforts that we have a huge investment in ATSPMs right now as a region. And, you know, as things are fluidly changing and we're bringing more agencies on board and stuff like that, I'm not saying like the ADT information in ATSPM, like I would use it for, you know, warrant studies or anything like that. But for planning applications, identifying trends and whatnot, that is a strong point. And we do have that data very readily available and easy to get to on the consultant side as well, that we probably really need to be pushing that a little bit more as we look into projects and, you know, future growth and new you know, checkboxes on the application and whatnot. Even just having the information of, do you have ATSPMs at these signals on these corridors, to push the consultants a little bit more to use it. Because as far as resources, like Bruce is talking about, reprioritize our resources as well. So traditionally, McDOT the last couple of years has pulled back on not applying for any of these TSOP project funding, but at the same time, we've been using our resources a lot differently, using the real-time information coming out of ATSPM to really focus in on what we need to change on our corridors and whatnot. So just a little bit of feedback on that.
So if I may comment on what you just said, I mean, reminded us that these other ITS initiatives that we took place, that we really need to leverage those efforts because these things intertwine. And I remember that ATSPM, if you read what's on the paper, right? If you configure up all the detections that you have, if you happen to have the lane by lane detections, then you get a lot of performance matrices, and one of them is turning movement count, right? So, one thing that I think, I mean, totally, I mean, we need to look into any system that already collecting, we just don't have the systematic knowledge. And in the call for project, this kind of short fuse process, when those information are not readily available, it's hard to make use of it. So I think this might, you know, deserve a separate effort, whereas happening in the ITS committee or part of the Aztec ongoing initiative to look into what we have to audit, where you might have a capable detector, but it might not be configured up for ATSPM, and therefore it might not be producing the turning movement count. Where you already have the turning movement count, then we might be able to relate that to Max TSOP project, because we supposedly paid the consultant for that 2 hour, hopefully very accurate count to verify what you have. And when we do that over time, you have more location, you know, configured correctly. And then we have the confidence of the data it provides. Then we could start moving away from what we have to live with now.
Do we have any other comments? I think I'm gonna do it. What we're gonna do first is just, let's go ahead and do a motion to recommend approval of the FY 2023 TSOP list that Eric's already shown us. We'll go ahead and do that vote first. And then we can have a little more discussion on what the committee would recommend as far as the opportunity for the 137,000. So this is just asking for a motion to recommend approval of the projects that have come in for this year.
Well, if I may suggest or add to that, is what we are going for is the recommended list of projects with their allocated budgets,
okay,
based on what the list is right now. So we do have room in the calendar. It kind of shifts some of our projects to be finally approved not until September in terms of calendar of events to get through the whole MAG approval process. But we can revisit this before taking action. If you recommend, we can add that cost to the projects, and then we'll have the full breakdown, and we can approve this in July, or we can take the list as is, or we can take this cost. Just to make it clear that we're recommending the list of projects with their budgets.
Got it. So maybe then instead, do we have any comments from any of the members as far as what their recommendation would be? Looking at this current chart, whether we add an hour, whether we add 2 hours, and then is there still the opportunity for segment counts possibly as well?
Yes.
I guess my question to that would be is obviously we can see the price difference between the 1 hour and 2 hour editions. So my question to be with Eric, obviously you've had some communication with member agencies looking to either add on to or apply for another project or projects.
Mhm.
Would the 74,760 cover that?
I don't have enough information to answer that. I just know that there was interest for a spring project if we did a later call for projects. But I don't know the extent or the scope of what that project would look. My guess, again, the cap for each particular project is 80,000 per project. So that could potentially fit, but given the scope of all the projects that we've seen this year, we did not draw near to that particular number in this case.
So following on that, my recommendation would be to maybe get some of that information. Because my goal would be to fund as much, all the projects, and then give each project as much as we could. So if that meant that the project ask between 1, 2, or more agencies would fall below the 74,000, then great, we give the additional 2 hours. If it's between the 74,000 and 106, then we give the additional 1 hour. That's my kind of recommendation. So I guess it would be looking at as a motion to approve the list, and then we would follow back once we have more information.
Correct. Well, if we need that more information to approve list and projects, it may be best that we move the approval to the July meeting, pending more information.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yeah, that I would feel more comfortable making a decision at that point.
And
Well,
by
what
the time we will know the expanded data collection efforts.
But would it make sense to go ahead, as Steve suggested, and actually approve the project list as it is, regardless of cost? And then we can decide at the July meeting, how do we take the 137,000, whether we add to each project or not? But the decision to move forward with those projects, is that something are these the projects we want to move forward? Regardless of whether we do more projects or not, is it helpful to have that these be approved as submitted?
I think, Jeff, do you have?
Yeah, if I may address. So the typical procedure is ITS committee make the recommendation, then go up the chain of command, and ultimately approval is in the policy committee. But so if we do it separately, meaning we just advocate for what we have today, and these will have to go through, and then the next wave will be a kind of amendment addendum.
Jeff, that's not what I'm suggesting. I get what you're saying, but if Eric said it correctly, that we really have till July to make the decision. What I'm saying is that we, as a committee, say these are the projects we want to move forward. The cost to be determined and decided at another meeting.
Got it now.
Well, if I may clarify, then again, what we're approving is the list of projects with their associated budgets. So the overall program cost. So we've never done where you just do 2 separate approvals, basically. So I would recommend, if I may, is to hold off altogether until July, so we can just do that single approval. I see no benefit in approving a list of projects and then approving their budgets later on. We can do that as a single approval.
And there is no negative impact on delaying till July.
The only delay or the only impact to that is that we would get final Regional Council Executive Committee approval in September. I believe it's September 15th. So that would kick off all the projects heading into September. That only particularly affects maybe just the fall projects. But in terms of getting the turning movement counts, all of that, we can pre-schedule a lot of those things ahead of time. So hopefully hit the ground running and have all the task orders ready for execution or for budget proposals from the consultants right on September 15th. We can start getting those things going. We can do all the data collection movements, turning movement counts and all that for the particular TSOP projects. The projects would not be completed till, let's say, January, but that's usually just the technical reports and stuff like that at the end.
It sounds reasonable. Plus you don't want to do fall counts too early. So.
I agree with that. I just have one question. So in the past, we've done some synchro training. Is that anticipated this time around too?
Yeah, I'll let Omar answer that.
It is anticipated. We're still working through the synchro training contracting part. So it's expected to be in June or July.
Then to move us forward, I move to table the motion.
Great.
I second.
Do we need to take a vote?
I don't
think so.
It was mostly just for information. So actually, we did have that calendar here. So I anticipated possibly if we did a June recommendation, it would be August. So the regional council would move August to September on that approval. So we're looking at, I believe the date is September 15th would be the regional council executive approval of the project and budgets, because they're the committee that recommends all the budgetary actions and things of that sort. So I was looking at already in August, maybe September start of the fall project. So if we table that, we'll definitively look at September as the start date of all those projects.
Okay, then we'll go ahead and move this item to the next meeting.
Great.
And with that, we'll move on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Jeff, as well, for all your research and help on these items. Our next item is request for future agenda items. So does any member of the ITS committee have topics or issues of interest that you would like to have considered for discussion at a future meeting? Hearing none, don't forget that you can always.
Mr. Chair.
Oh.
Mr. Chair, this is Marshall.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to continue, it's kind of off, it's related to the topic we just discussed, but to what Jeff was talking about technologies moving forward, I'm just wondering if down the road, I'm thinking, a year or two down the road, should we open up the TSOP funding to allow agencies to bring in supplemental staff to use some of these built-in optimizers to kind of address some of the things that Bruce is talking about just our normal business is getting us overrun, and bring in supplemental staff so that they can use some of these built-in features that more and more of these systems are coming up with.
Okay, I think I understand what you were asking, Marshall, and maybe we can have some offline discussions and see if we can wrap it into a topic for future discussion.
Sure. Thanks.
Okay. With that, we will move on to the item number 8, comments from the committee. So beginning with Susan, I would like to invite members to share information related to ongoing ITS related project activities in their jurisdictions. So with that, we'll go to Susan.
Hi, all. I don't have any update today. Thank you.
Thank you. Hugh,
Nothing for Goodyear. Thank you.
thank you. Tricia,
No update from Mesa today.
okay, thank you. Melissa,
Alyssa from Chandler, is that who you meant?
yes.
Oh, sorry. No updates. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Albert,
No update for Surprise.
Bruce,
We just are in the process of ordering our second fiber contract. For the second one was on Baseline. Interestingly, the prices are still coming in ridiculously low, and we're very thankful for that. The bids were anywhere from 3 million to 8 million. Interestingly, the contractor that bid Indian School as the low bid was the high bid on Baseline. They must have learned how not to install fiber. But it's interesting that we're moving forward with that. But the pricing, even with how traffic signals are going up, fiber has not really jumped to the roof yet.
thank you, Bruce. Ellie,
No updates from Tempe.
I'm next on the list. We turned another 2 signals on since last meeting. So it's been some interesting challenges. The latest one that was turned on was actually right in the middle of our adaptive corridor along Olive. So it was the first signal to be turned on with the adaptive equipment installed as the only detection for the project. So it's had its challenges, but it will be, it's working fairly well right now, and we expect in the next couple of weeks it'll be working even better as far as just coordination through there. But that's been some excitement. Marshall, you are next on the list.
Yeah, so in Queen Creek, we didn't put in for any TSOPs because we don't have a single corridor that will not be under construction next year. So give you an idea what's happening down in that neck of the woods. But we have almost completed the installation of our Centrax mobility system, and we're going to be starting our training program in earnest. So that will be quite a hands-on, intense 3 months going through that. That's the update.
Thank you. Ward?
I think we recently turned on a new signal at 119 from McDowell. We've got, I think, 3 more in the works. We've got a new intersection, or not a new one, but an intersection improvement taking place at 107 in McDowell, which just greatly interfered with our McDowell TSOP. And surprisingly, when questioned about any upcoming construction, that one never seemed to arise until we already had our TSOP. But the 2 companies that are doing McDowell, we did half with Phoenix, Tullison, and ADOT, and then we did the west half of our McDowell with Goodyear. So we split the corridor basically right at 107. And those are still working out quite well. We're doing the implementation this morning of the east section, which includes 99th and McDowell, I-10 and Loop 101 intersections. And it's just a testament to how much better organized and coordinated traffic flows through an intersection versus free timings, and kind of that those 2 different modes. Usually 99th McDowell is grossly congested and just a problem. But finally having some coordinated timings on there this morning was a sight to behold. Let's just put it that way. And so hopefully the rest of the day goes that way too. We have been working on trying to get our area project off the ground. We had to rebid it last year, and then when we lost staff members, workload got in the way of getting it back reauthorized in a timely manner. But we're still in that effort. And unfortunately, we lost our first project manager just through a job change. And most recently lost our second ADOT project manager to COVID. Sudden, surprising, highly unfortunate. And so we got only one bit of last go round. I'm hoping they come back this go round after they found that there was an error. It wasn't just a simple overbid. It was an error that caused the overbid. So that's kind of us for the moment.
Thank you, Ward. Mike?
It is busy here in Gilbert as everywhere. But other than that, in the essence of time, nothing more to report.
Thanks, Mike. Christopher?
This is Chris with Pinal County. I don't have any updates this time.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Tessa?
Nothing to report from El Mirage.
Okay, John Willett?
Nothing really new to add this time.
Thank you, John. April?
So on the project side for McDOT, through the Loop 101 Mobility Project, we are acquiring about 640 OBU units. And so that initial push to install in the McDOT fleet vehicles is going to start happening on May 23rd. So that is some great progress, obviously waiting for delivery of things. So I'm anticipating that date getting pushed out, but thought it would be worth sharing. And then on the staffing side, we have David Lucas joining the McDOT team as the traffic technology branch manager, and then myself being the traffic operations branch manager. So with that said, that means that the arterial operations branch manager position is actually posted now. So if you guys know of anyone, feel free to send them our way.
Thank you, April. With that, I think we've gone through the list. And our next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, June 1st at 10 a.m. And it's going to be in this Saguaro room. And it will still be a hybrid. So with the virtual option. And with that, our meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Hey, Eric, can you hang for a second after this if you haven't left already?